Well, we're so excited to have you here, Devon, with having Cha with Laura and Leah, and we're just gonna get into some good conversations.
Get into it.
And the dog is there, but I guess she's allowed. Yeah. I mean, we've already been having such good convection. The behind the scenes Cha, which is like the real Cha.
I should have just been like, I will not answer any questions until we turn on the microphone.
But I mean, like, so there's so much talk about organizing, and as we're all trying to like figure out our individual roles in the revolution. Yeah. I mean, even defining what revolution is important. That's but you've been organizing for a long time.
You know, I'm hesitant. Thank you. I had a brief moment of falling into an organization, I will say, which was the McCarran Gathering, which was started by a couple of women, I believe, white women, and everyone came to the gathering and stood in silence for the amount of time that the officer put his knee to George Floyd's neck. And that was that, and as things should be, some black people took it over. And my friend Nina Simone, who I did music with and was just like a good, dear friend, was part of that as well. And they started to, instead of just using that moment for silence, which I think was very easy for people, especially in the area, especially for white people, to just kind of show up and be silent and then go on about
it's very passive. It's like a very passive. Like
the significance is, you know, it just feels, it's a lot of signaling in that, I think, and not useless if there are other actions tied to it or education. And so I think that's what they tried to do. So then the black people who took it over tried to build that in. And my friend Simu, who I always have to just give this, I don't know, praise or something that is just like, she brought me into this consciousness that I could organize. I could be a part of this. And she said, you should do history lessons at the McCarran Gathering, because I started doing videos just kind of like, hey, this is why education is bunk.
Well, also, like, if you think of just organizers throughout our recent history, there's always a tie to like a physical space.
Yes.
And this is what's so different with social media, quote, activism or whatever is like, it's good, it's part of it, but I think we're all wanting, I mean, that's why we're here physically together too, right? Where I think there is something to like being together in a physical space, like being able to see other people, talk to other people, and
very important.
Yeah,
it's very important. And at the gathering also, because I started doing videos on Instagram and just kind of, I realized I was positioned as someone who read and was curious and wanted to understand these things better, to share that information. And so I started doing the Monday Moments in History, and then I kind of became one of the lead organizers. And the only reason that worked is because my family was in New Zealand during COVID, fortunate enough, and I came back. And so it was that time. And once they came back, I wasn't able to be at the gathering as much. So
your family, like your kids?
My kids and wife, yeah.
They were in New Zealand?
They were in New Zealand.
What?
Yeah,
how?
Because my wife has New Zealand citizenship. She moved there when she was 11. So she was able to, get the kids there.
To get out of New York?
To get out of New York in the heat of
Yeah, New York. I was pregnant. She wouldn't have been pregnant. She wasn't pregnant.
No, we had a 3-month-old at the time.
Right. So I was pregnant in early 2020, and it felt so scary being in the city, because it was like, that's where we were hit so bad, right? And you just
I heard
like
stories.
Yeah.
I wasn't here, but I heard.
Right. So they went to.
So they went. I went with them. I was with them too. I was there for like 3 months. Is it time for you to go? You're not getting enough attention.
You had enough.
Kinley, go! Come on, off you pop.
Go ahead.
Off, go. Sorry.
I
just gonna walk.
We'll have more time.
Come on, don't walk over our guest. Okay. So you were on your own basically, so you were able to.
So I was able to. Yeah, I was like, I had the time to do this. And but once they came back, I got a day job, which I have now, which I'm grateful for. And so so that all is to say that was a moment. It was a intense sort of commitment to organizing on the ground and trying to create a space for the movement. But once the family came back home and things opened up and work, it was harder to do that. I tried to stay connected that I wasn't. So I would say, as organizing wise, is much more just like very small community trying to connect people and trying to find the time to work on community level things and awareness, but like mostly is talking shit on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at your Instagram, and so you started in 2020. Is that really when you opened your Instagram?
No, okay. I just removed everything before then because I committed after Palestine recently. I committed to like I'm never going to talk about my DJ gigs or my fun life or like.
It's hard to reconcile, right?
I just can't do it. So I removed pretty much all unrelated stuff except for one picture with Michael K. Williams that I just can't because I cherish it so much. And I just removed everything else. And I was just like, this page is about liberation.
Yeah. That's
what this page is. It no longer serves, like for me, that is what I'm going to talk about. I can't imagine going back no matter what happens in Palestine or things get better in the US. I can't imagine not doing that anymore. Yeah.
So you went from talking about history in real life during COVID and Black Lives Matter, and then you are kind of organizing online now because you speak a lot about Palestine on your Instagram. So what's the difference to you?
Between the two? Between like that? Yeah. In my studies of liberation and understanding what liberation means and how it applies, right? What the actions are, what the problems are, and what the actions are. Obviously studying the teachers of Black liberation is just like the greatest lesson. And it was impossible to read them and not hear about Palestine. And then they all said, before I understood, it's all connected. And so I said, okay, I've got to learn about Palestine. So
was that recent then, or was it?
No. It was before the Al-Aqsa flood. Okay. It was before October 7th. Because I didn't post with such fervor, but before then I would post things that say, Zionism is terrorism. And I get DMs saying that's not okay. That's,
You're anti-Semitic.
Yeah, you're anti-Semitic. and I would just say like, do you know what Zionism is? And they didn't. And so when that happened, I was just like, I'm familiar with Hamas. I'm familiar with the resistance. I'm familiar with Israel. I'm familiar with Zionism. I know what this is. Yeah. And I can speak to this. And of course I inform myself even more. I go even deeper. Now that it's on everyone's tongue. So how it is connected, I think is, people like Angela Davis will never fail to remind you that liberation is an international movement, and that if people are oppressed anywhere, no one's free.
Yeah.
And I also think it's very clear that what's happening in Palestine is the exercise of what a colonial state can do.
Yeah.
And it's not even, you don't even have to guess the connections between the technology developed against Palestinians is exported throughout the world, and the methods of oppression create a blueprint for other countries. It's not even like conjecture. It's
I also
factual.
Think about the Malcolm X saying, I won't be able to recall it exactly, but like if you are only focused on solving problems in Mississippi and you're not looking at the Congo, like
that's right,
right, and
he specifically mentions the Congo.
Yeah, and but I feel like there's this divide, at least in American liberation movements, with like what the focus should be on,
sure.
Right, and like because we're all not white, right? So we're all have very
Sometimes I wonder.
But I mean, like, we have varying degrees of oppression individually and also just systemically.
Yeah.
But I'm not a Black person in America, and I'm very aware that is very different. Mm-hmm. So as over the last 16 months, I've been understanding more like what collective liberation is and how important it is to actually center Palestine in this moment, because of all the reasons, because it's our tax dollars, because it's our government, right? Like, but I sometimes hit these kind of problematic moments in conversations where it's like, oh, well, we need to focus on who is most oppressed in quote unquote America, which is not Palestinians, which we need to focus on Black liberation and this question of like, well, what does that mean and what does that look like? And I think this was never more like loud than leading up to the election, right? With like Kamala Harris on the ticket. And it was a really weird moment for me because people that I had been so closely tied with because of Palestine, because we stand for justice and liberation and against oppression, the majority of that group suddenly was like super excited about voting for Kamala Harris. And I was like, what? And then when I kind of tried to, you know, challenge that, or not even challenge, just question, like, wait, how do you reconcile being against genocide, but then voting for a party enacting genocide? There's a lot of shutdown due to like the identity politics, as they say. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that. I know.
We all kind of came to the awareness of how connected these things are, right? We it's not a light bulb moment. It's like a series of moments that sort of build this awareness. And I just think a lot of people have not hit that. I think if Palestine's new for you, what's happening in Palestine, which has been happening for, a century, then you haven't had time to connect the dots.
Right.
You haven't had time to understand our place. And I will say too that a lot of awareness came, in those two big moments of George Floyd, despite several police killings before that of Black people, and in Palestine. And so the awareness is building, but not a lot of people have not arrived. And I'll also say that there are definitely people who say liberation, but have not done a deep dive into the methods of liberation and what does not work for liberation. There was times where I thought voting would help, and for a president, there's other mechanisms of voting that can help in the short term. So I just think a lot of people aren't able to connect the dots because a lot of this is new. It's new information. And it's also really hard to completely break down your understanding of what you've been conditioned for most of your life when you're in your 30s, that the electoral system is not a democracy. It is not in your favor. These things sound wild. I remember how wild it sounded to me when I really wanted to.
Sounds like conspiracy theory, right? Yeah.
I'm just like, we got to vote for this Obama. Yeah. And at that point, it was like one person. It was like, it's all a sham. And I'm like, okay, crazy. And then I would say like Obama was probably what really radicalized me was Obama and the failures of that presidency.
And I wasn't even paying attention.
So right. But so that awareness, and I remember people who were talking that shit and had that awareness before. So I just think they're not there yet. And I think we are just working to make them aware that a Black president isn't pro-Black. It's not necessarily pro-Black, and it's definitely not liberation. An investment in federal politics is not liberation. And if you want to understand what is, and you want to look at the leaders of liberation throughout history. You want to read Angela Davis. You want to read the international, people who talk about what is happening in Africa, who critique these systems around the world. You need to see what they said. What did they say? And then interrogate that. But I don't think they've done that yet.
It's so wild because that's just like how my brain works. I just like connect all the dots, but that's not what the point that I wanted to make. I actually wanted to ask you about what you thought of Kendrick Lamar's performance, if you watched it. And there's this whole discourse going on that I've watched like countless videos on now. Is he a revolutionary? Is he not? Will the revolution be televised? Will it be not? And my question is, because again, we're not Black, obviously, but like I saw that performance as him getting the attention of 150 million viewers. He was talking about Blackness, is very like apparent to me. And he's doing it within like the NFL, which is the most racist thing, right? What was he supposed to do? What else was he supposed to do if that's what he stands for? He's talking about his experience from Compton. So I just want to know, like, your opinion.
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar is not a revolutionary. Not in the slightest, not even close. And the reason I say that is because you just, the person's politics, right? The man who said, I'm an Israelite, don't call me black no more, cannot be a pro-liberation.
What did that even mean? What does that even mean?
There's a movement of black people who want to connect, them being the beginning of people,
like in the Bible.
And but then kind of mischaracterizing as them being the original Israelites. It's problematic to say the least.
Right.
Ahistorical, and it's pretty easy to say. And so he has not reached a level of education to be a revolutionary. So his performance at the NFL, I have not watched. I've seen clips and stuff. Yeah, I don't care. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm bumping GNX, and I'm dancing not like us all the time. I had no investment in the beef or who was what. I was just like, I love rap and I love rap music and going back and forth. And who
also because you're a musician.
So he's a great artist.
Right.
He's a fantastic artist.
Right.
He's a great rapper. He pushes the boundaries in the music.
Right.
Outside of that, he gets more credit than he deserves. And he's even said, like, in his lyrics sometimes, like, I don't know why you even think of me like that.
Yeah.
So his performance at the Super Bowl, from what I could tell, I just think if you are that adamant about the American flag, which for me, I just do not think I don't think it can be reclaimed in the name of black people, in the name of the black struggle. I just don't think you are aware what I've learned from the leaders of liberation who set the blueprint. I don't think you've arrived there for what they prescribed, and not just one, but many. So I think that performance just kind of contributes to the parading the coolness of black people for white people and for capitalist sake, and I don't think it really it changes anything on that stage. And that's fine. Get your bag, do whatever, but don't call yourself a revolutionary.
Right.
But when black people like Beyonce and Oprah and Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z, they all get to achieve this level of success that is like, maybe not anymore, but the American dream.
Sure.
So what you're saying is they're not. You can't be revolutionary and hold that kind of.
You can't be revolutionary and capitalist. You cannot be very invested in capitalists in creating companies that rake in millions and billions, which you cannot rake in without exploitation, without workers being exploited, without them selling their labor for less than the value of what their labor contributes to, and be revolutionary. And these people have explicitly defended capitalism. I love music. I love, if we talk, I can talk about the greatness of them as artists all day, and their contribution to music is vast and great and valuable. And beyond that has been very disappointing. Beyonce, one of my favorite artists, who I think is brilliant, is as far as politics and revolution and liberation, going on the stage to endorse Harris and talk about the children. I cannot see a world in which they should be considered revolutionary. And I also don't want us to think that is success. The Oprahs, I think it's, they can only get there through exploitation and capitalist means, which is the opposite of liberation. And
there's not enough room for the masses at that level, right? No, it's only certain people that are going to get up there. So it ultimately is like a selfish, ego-driven path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I just think I think they always show, like Beyonce, it was looking good for a minute, like the halftime show with the Black Panther stuff, and you're like, oh. But then there's always a test. There's always something where you show the limits. And Palestine showed the limits. Yeah. and the desire to reclaim America at a time which America was invested and showing its imperial colors, which have always been there, and it's leaned towards fascism before Donald Trump even was sworn in. And yeah, so I just think, it's hard to co-sign that or to endorse that as something that we should chase as Black people.
Well, it's also, we talk about this, right? I asked your opinion on Beyonce, having won the Grammy recently, and I was interested by some of the comments where people were critical of who she has been or not been, and Laura was just because Black people have been so oppressed in this country, and because we are not Black, it's sort of, we feel like it's not really our place to offer any sort of criticism. And I agree with that. And also I'm but that is what stalls the conversation of liberation for all. And if we think everything's connected, then everything's connected. So it's
because I would rather pick apart Elon Musk than Beyonce.
Fair.
For sure.
To be clear.
So many
white
men billionaires that Beyonce is the last person on my list that I want to pick apart.
Right.
So it's not that I'm afraid to have the conversation. It's just that if we're talking about billionaires and not just the individual, then I'd rather talk about what's his Zucker bitch.
Yeah.
It's ew.
That's
that's fair.
100%.
That's
if what we are to kind of, what your thing is, right, is when we're talking about, is we only get so far talking about people as opposed to addressing structures.
Right.
We only get so far, and people that are holding up the structures. And so the only reason to reference the Beyoncés and the Jay-Z's is the idea that this is liberation, right?
Right.
But outside of that, that's fine. I think we need to criticize capitalist structures and the things that support capitalist structures. And so, on one hand, worrying about Beyonce winning this Grammy and her demeanor is anti-Black. There's a lot of people who just want to criticize her, and she has to be a certain way because there's different expectations. For the Feminista Jones was talking about this, the expectation for a Black woman to be when they're dismissive, it's they're ungrateful. Right. That is true as well as if you are talking about revolutionary politics, it's non-existent in that world. But it is. But we need to address the structures that impede us from collective liberation, and it is more important to talk about that than worry about celebrities and the small, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because why are we even putting all of that on her and a musician?
It's not on her. That's right.
And I think we need to transform our relationship to celebrities, because if Beyonce and Kendrick's are the musicians and the artists, and they're here to give us entertainment, is it their role for revolution? Is it even their role?
It's not their role, but if they step into a revolutionary role, and if they wear the uniform of revolution, right, which would literally happen for them, then it's open for criticism. Okay. So that's what I think. I think it's if you are saying, I'm representing Blackness, Black people, Black power, and liberation, you have now exposed yourself. If you said, I'm an entertainer, I tap dance, I sing good, leave me alone. I have some thoughts, but I'm not coming for you. Right. So I think it is that they have assumed a role willingly to be the voice and represent those struggles, and then we can talk in the community about how that actually moves the conversation, moves the needle, or if it just reinforces the structures that are oppressing us. Yeah.
Because from my point of view, it seems like they're sort of doing that for Black people, and you're saying they're not.
No, I think they think they are. I think Kendrick on the stage thinks I'm doing But
I think it stops when it talks about advocating for Palestinians or Congolese, right?
You hit a wall, and
you hit a wall. That's what we're talking about, right? That's their responsibility too.
Well, I think your point is if you put on the uniform of liberation, then it becomes your responsibility.
I think that's what I'm saying. Is it's all of our responsibility.
Yeah.
Even if you're a celebrity, it's all of our responsibility, right? I would love to see I won't prescribe this, but I would love to see people in positions of power, and maybe they're not in must positions of power, like a Beyonce, like a Kendrick, like a Taylor Swift, to use that power to address structures and not individuals, and you know what I mean, and like, and like they just like kind of dance around it until it would cause real sacrifice for them. And then you just have to think like, well, what's the sacrifice for Beyonce, for Kendrick, for Taylor?
Yeah.
What's
like if they never worked another day in their life, they'd be fine.
If they were really
right?
to push the agenda, if they were really to just be like, are their lives going to be destroyed? Are they like, what are their sacrifices compared to us? Like we were talking earlier, speaking out, losing our jobs, our livelihood, our mortgage, or being targeted. Like, so is it their responsibility? It's I think they have the same responsibility as us, but I do think that we don't need to. If we focused less on them, we'd probably have more resources to build collective liberation in our community. Yeah. If we weren't worried about celebrities occupying the same space as presidents,
right,
as like signifying some good or some help or some ability to address the structure while operating within the structure and reinforcing it in ways that are not harmful. So intention is one thing. I think their intention is that, but again, it's outcomes. It's always the material outcomes of your actions. So when you are being racist, you don't always mean to be racist, but the outcome is racism or microaggressions, and the outcome affects the people, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to.
Because people in the comment section are like, well, Macklemore's doing it, but I think Macklemore has to do it because he's a white man in the rap industry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, I love how you're smiling.
Because I got something. I'm like,
tell us. Say it.
Because I was just reading the comment section and I'm like, how could you compare Macklemore to Kendrick? First of all, Macklemore is a white man infiltrating this culture, so it's almost like he has to, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, he don't have to, because I think it would be. I just how many other white men are doing it? Yeah. How many other white men are doing it? I mean. I'm saying respect to Macklemore, who's like, I never even looked at much of, I danced to thrift shop, but like.
Yeah. I barely knew who he was before.
I knew,
I did. I was like, oh, that song sounds familiar.
I knew who he was, and he's not talentless. Boy's got talent, and from a person who also studied the music industry, being in the music industry, his hustle is great, is admirable, right? His hustle of being very independent and creating chart topping and just like a lot of work before that moment. So I think I give more respect. They might come for me on this one. To Macklemore for speaking out the way he speaks out than like the way that Kendrick speaks out. I think he's speaking directly to the issue, saying specifically, this is the problem, and playing his role. I think he stumbled at times with the text to Kendrick and just being like and posting that and just like, and I think he's learning. But again, as far as artistry, Kendrick is amazing. I listen to I know all his music. I know his catalog, right? I think he's brilliant when it comes to music. I love his music. I can also critique. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, he took a chance there and it didn't hit. Like, I have criticisms of him as an artist as well, as a fan, but he's a brilliant artist. And I'm telling you, I bump GNX all the time. I have
a confession to make.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also like Drake's music.
Me too. This is my thing. He's great.
I love his music.
He's great. He's a sick rapper, an incredible artist, super talented.
Yeah, I love his beats.
It's great. I just like, it's not, it doesn't even have to be like, you know what I mean? Like one of the, like, and that's another thing, when, there's these debates in this beef, like I don't entertain it publicly because I'm like, this shit don't matter right now.
Right.
But obviously with my friends, I'm just like, oh, can you believe that? Like we're talking people in the game and my rapper friends and producer friends. And it's just like being on one side never makes sense to me for anything. I think that's just the thing. I'm just like, oh, I got to choose a side.
I know.
I don't have to choose a side.
I'm not like that at all. I'm like, wait, we have to choose?
I want to see what they do. I want to see. And that was it. I was just like, I want to see him respond and then him respond and see what's up. I'm like, oh, that was kind of weak. Oh, that was crazy. like, not silly to be invested. These people don't care about me. How can I be so invested in them and their success?
Well, that's the celebrity culture drawing us in, which has just been such a huge driver of American opinion and values.
Yeah.
And this is what we've seen really fall over the last 16 months. But I think we keep getting pulled back because like the neural pathways are very deeply laid to like look to celebrities to see what they're going to say.
Certainly.
And we can say like, oh, deplatform them, all this, but we still end up back there, right? Like it's still old habits die hard.
Like put them in their own category of like, this is their music and I like listening to it.
Yeah.
I don't look to them as like leaders. Like they're not going to.
But that's the problem. That's you. That's you.
That's right.
That's us.
That's accurate. But that's the right. That's the right.
It's not the mainstream, though.
It's not the mainstream.
That's the problem. That's what you're naming is like, cool, appreciate his artistry, but like, don't be confused. Thinking he's a revolutionary, thinking like making it to the NFL halftime stage is a revolutionary act. No, that's a capitalistic act. And I think that's what we need to be clear on.
But as an artist, like, isn't it in your dream to want a Grammy? And No? Wow.
Not me.
Not
me. I understand that aspiration. I understand that desire for recognition. And maybe 10 years ago, you put me on a Grammy stage.
You're going to start a protest.
You put me at the halftime show.
Have, like, all the flags.
You saw one flag at the halftime show from one brave protester. You put me at a halftime show.
What do you think of him?
Shout out to him. Shout out to him.
And I do think there are many people that are like instantly understood who was, the revolutionary there. Right.
That had nothing to do with Kendrick.
That was
Kendrick, like, for all intents and purposes, is a Zionist. Unfortunately, that had nothing to do with him, and it's not something he would condone. I don't think. I can't speak for him, but like, it just doesn't make sense for what he said. His politics that he's that he's led us into. So shout out to that person and the risk that they took to use that platform and that stage to send that message. We see you, like, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, and that's. I hope we are emboldened to do more of that, because the more that crops up, the harder it is for the people in power to manage and to feel like there's ever a safe moment for things to go as normal.
Like, we're going to embarrass you. And
every opportunity we get.
We're going to be here.
That's the mentality. And just to speak to the thing earlier of just like, we need to not, the celebrity worship and look to them for leaders. And I just think that we have been conditioned here to outsource solutions to higher powers. We are looking for, I think I said this with you in our last talk, of like, we're kind of always looking for like a parental figure to take care of. Patriarchy, the daddy, right? We're looking for a daddy. Absolutely. Yeah. And we kind of accept it. And so we're looking for, if we just get this president to solve this issue, if we can get, Beyonce to, and it would be great if they really use their resources to address this, but depending on it is kind of foolish. And collective liberation is understanding the power in the community around us and the people around us, and creating the kind of awareness that does not depend on a daddy or a parental figure or a mommy, whether they be black or whatever, and understanding that they cannot free us. They cannot grant us liberation. We grant it through our power collectively in our communities.
You've mentioned a few times awareness, and earlier you were saying like there was a time where you didn't have the awareness and now you do. What is this awareness that you're talking about?
I think the awareness is kind of that, exactly that of realizing, seeing the structure for what it is, and shedding the delusion that the structure is working in favor of people who look like me, is working in favor of women, is working in favor of the queer community, of the trans community, and that despite any lip service that may come from people in power and the elites, that the structure is built in a way that is antagonistic to our well-being. And so the awareness was post-Obama, after riding hard and being like, getting a black president in there is going to change things, and seeing business as usual, very centrist policy, very aggressive conservative policies when it comes to immigration, very strange black shaming, statements. the awareness is that the structure that we live in, and how it has poisoned everything we think is there to protect us, from policing to democracy, to the social services, to, I mean, just like everything. And it's really hard. It's really overwhelming to have that awareness, and it's very daunting, and you just want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And it feels better to be ignorant.
Yeah.
And I miss those days.
Right.
I'm like, I literally told my mom, the more educated you are, the sadder things are.
Well, we think Anthony Bourdain, who Laura is always like, that's my muse, right? Yeah.
One.
We all get one, huh?
Yeah.
Just one.
But like, I think about how much he really understood about the way things are, from traveling and having like hard conversations. He went to Palestine, he went to the Congo. He just knew so much. And I wonder exactly what you're saying. Like, you just want to go to sleep when you know so much. When you're more educated, you're like, oh my God. So sometimes I think about that. I mean, there's lots going on there, but I just think if he were alive, he would be, I think, right with this kind of conversation. Like, he'd be trying to say this, but knowing, like, in the position he was in, being so visible and famous, and just knowing what you're up against.
Yeah.
Because it is a dark night of the soul when you start to become more and more aware, and the more you know, you're like, oh my God, everything is colonized.
Yeah.
And then at what point though do you turn that around and you transmute it, and then you create art? Like, how do you do that?
I think once the awareness comes and you let it come and you stop fighting it, right? You sort of give up on the idea of sleeping through this. It becomes a part of you, I think. I don't even think you have to work to exercise it. The same way that the propaganda of this structure, of this capitalist white supremacist structure, sort of becomes a part of you for that time being, before that awareness. The way you act and the way the choices you make and the way you look at people and judge people is informed by that. And then when you unlearn that and when you shed that and you have a new frame of reference, it automatically informs it. I liken it to when you watch a film, or I guess this was the old films, I don't know if they do this now with the digital ones, you once someone pointed out a cigarette burn, that's what they called it, in the corner of the film, which is how they know to change the reels, you never miss it.
Right.
You watched movies for years before someone pointed it out and you never caught it. And now someone pointed it out, and now every time you watch the movie, you see it.
Right. It's like you can't not see it.
You can't not see it. So the great thing about that awareness and the human condition is once it comes, it doesn't go away. Like, once you really understand Palestine, and once you understand white supremacy, the Constitution, the country being founded, and really not just kind of like, I think we have this cognitive dissonance where, like, the country was founded, it's the greatest place, and it's freedom for all people, but there were slaves, but that was a different time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? But once you accept that there's a through line from that cognitive dissonance that they purposefully had, talking freedom on one side of their mouth and enslaving people on the other, and defending that, and that through line has not changed in the structure, then you just see in the structure all of the faults and cracks and things that make it, again, completely antagonistic to our well-being. Even white people, poor white people, right? Just like, this ain't for you.
Right.
Like, they used me to make you think you were better and that there was benefit. Like, once you understand that, it's a lot harder, I think, with that awareness. People fight it, but once you're truly aware, what are you going to do?
Right.
Everything goes through that lens.
Everything goes through that lens.
And then there's actual liberation in that, though, right? Like, on a personal level, knowing the truth, even if the truth is terrifying, there's this, like, feeling of, like, okay, well, I can move and make my choices and live my life with that truth. And there's something about it that's actually more enlivening.
I think so. I think so. I think the awareness, for me at least, and maybe this is like a pride thing, is I'm just like, oh, the wool's off. You can't pull the wool over my eyes ever again.
Yeah.
You can't fool me.
Yeah.
You can't, like, I feel great about that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Seeing through the structures sometimes feels like a superpower.
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you're just like, I was made aware by the teachers of liberation and by other people in my community who were ahead of me in their awareness. And what a power that is. Once you get past the sleeping and the feelings of like this being a dystopian nightmare, then a President Trump gets elected and you're not as panicked.
No.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're like, I saw this coming.
Yeah.
Right? This is a natural evolution of the system if you understand the system and the structure. And so it's less frightening. You're more prepared
That's
when
what
you're
we're
aware.
talking about.
Yeah.
We're not like as afraid.
Yeah.
No. So
Do you get I've been getting messages though since the inauguration from my liberal friends, like huge messages of just like, what is happening? What is Trump doing? He's so crazy. Da, da, da. And like I'm sort of trying to think like, how do I respond in a way that is like that can hold their fear, not be insulting to them because they genuinely don't get it.
that's right.
But not and also not push them away by being like.
You
Obvious,
see this coming.
Yeah.
I had a post on January 19th.
Yeah. Do you find yourself in those kinds of conversations still, or is your kind of immediate circle all aligned with your perspective?
I mean, I'm probably always the most, in my immediate circle, the most radical, which needs to change. Yeah. I need someone to like be like more left than me, so I can hold on a second. Wait a minute, let me think about this. I did have a conversation recently with a friend who was just like trying to understand and trusted me to have that conversation to make sense of what's happening, which I'm actually grateful for when my friends reach out to me. I think those conversations are so important.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the community.
I think people are really trying to understand, right? And if they love and respect you, but they're just not there with that awareness, they're trying.
Yeah. And so in most of those situations, I think I find it easy to be empathetic and to be gentle and to sort of try and create the awareness of like, this is what I think the tactic is. And here's what I think we actually should be worried about.
And what is that? What should we be worried about?
Well, I think that the barrage. It's not that Trump poses no real danger. This is the most real danger, right? The democracy has seen, and what I think we need to understand is like this. The barrage of executive memos and stuff that overwhelms media outlets, overwhelms politicians, overwhelms leaders. And then you end up talking about stuff that it would just have a hard time. Like people don't, because we lack a political education, I think people have a hard time understanding like what an executive memo is, what's actually possible, what the powers of Congress are, what things will get pushed through, how things get challenged to the Supreme Court. So everything seems like a declaration of fact. And that just like probably just dysregulates your system.
Yes.
And it just, you know.
But I think that's why he does
That's why he does it.
Right.
He's a chaos agent.
That's what he does. And that's what he does. And he wants all these things to really happen, right? But it is really important that we understand, okay, when someone says executive memo removing birthright citizenship, we have to say, okay, this has the biggest hurdles.
Right.
Because the 14th Amendment literally in the first statement says, if you're born here, you're here.
Right.
And so you then have the battle, not this out of the realm of possibility of like challenging the Constitution in a statement that is unambiguous.
Yeah.
So let's not panic about that thing yet, right? And there are other things that actually materially will happen really, really soon. So, and I just also think our leaders, like on the left, the Democrats, just like watching that clown, go up and tell people like, the minority leader, what can we do? They have all the branches of government. What can we do? And you're like,
hello, the government.
Oh, what?
I know, they're literally just sitting there.
So it's they're not helping us at all. Like crying about Project 2025 and then preparing nothing other than vote for us.
Like AOC crying because they're deporting people, and I'm like, girl,
I'm so sick of her.
What are you doing?
I'm so sick of her. I'm so sick of her.
Thought you're from the Bronx.
Yo. Put them hands up. What you doing?
And one of your videos, which I feel this very strongly, you're like, when are we going to finally do something?
Yeah.
I think it was May of last year when everyone was like, all eyes on Rafa.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, enough with the eyes.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
we've been watching
That's right.
this for so
Right.
long. I'm like, we need to fucking do something. We need to storm the Capitol, allegedly. Like, not for real.
Not for real.
Like, maybe, but you know?
But I mean, just
But, like,
if someone were to storm the Capitol in the fight for liberation.
Literally, because most revolutions happen violently. So how do you what did you mean by that? Like, what did you mean?
Yeah.
By all of us.
We all listen. I firmly believe that revolutions are not carried out in comfort by the majority. They are carried out by a well-organized minority who usher in and bring the people along who want us to be there, but don't have the means or are not really ready to. I think Saul Williams said a lot of people aren't ready to live in a time of revolution.
Yeah.
And that's true, and especially because our system has really made it challenging. Mm-hmm. It's not a society of free thinkers. It's not a society of open education. It's not a society that encourages challenging power and structures. It is a yes sir society. So it is really challenging. So I think what we need is, if you are not the revolutionary who puts on the uniform, right, and is at the front lines, I need you to build with your community to start preparing for a revolution and find the people who can be, and start talking and organizing amongst each other, and start educating yourself, as you mentioned earlier, to understand what's happening and why this empire is falling and why all empires fall. Study the Algerian Revolution. Read on the Algerian Revolution. Read on the Haitian Revolution. Hell, read on the French Revolution, even though they screwed that big time. They messed that up. Damn it. But there was some great posts saying, talking about communist isn't reading Marx. It's like being hungry, right? It's like being without and realizing, and it's like, that man just explained a lot of things a lot of people knew that Africa had made sense of in many ways. And just, was German and white, and so it was easier to disseminate that message. But
he was also middle class.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. Shout out to him. That's fine.
Yeah.
Might be slightly racist. We can talk about that later. It's not a surprise. White dude in Germany would come on.
Literally.
Yeah, So, but it's not that the work has no value. But I think it is just like what it touches on is what when they talk about material conditions. How do we affect the material conditions? Let's get to the root of the issue in the way that Paulo Freire talks about Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which I highly recommend. Make that the first of your book club in your community meeting of who can liberate you. So what do we do? I think we start building with our community, finding our role. People refer to people as healers, as educators. I might fall into the educator front. I might get on the front lines if I'm allowed. Family doesn't like pulling back. And find your role. And remove investment from the federal government solving issues, and from politicians having your best interests in mind. And I will say again, understand what you said about violence, that you cannot liberate yourself from a violent system without violence. Yeah. It has never happened. We talk about the American Revolution and us being upset at the way we were treated by the monarchy. And how did we address that? No one has a problem with that. They don't have a problem with the Americans picking up guns and fighting for freedom against the British. They have a problem when black people do it to free themselves from slavery in America and Haiti. They have a problem when Palestinians do it in Israel, in Palestine, when they are fighting an oppressive, violent So
It's called terrorism.
it's called terrorism
When
when
you
you
do it, when it's black
So
people.
what do you expect if the guns have been on you, and the state is a violent force and enforces and coercion to abide by the system through violence, and that system does not benefit you? You do not get through it with talking and thoughts and prayers.
Peace talks.
You don't
Voting.
get. We're voting.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we need a project manager. It's like you are
Corporate
the
speak.
front lines,
Yeah. There you go.
and you are the healer.
There you go.
You're in charge of housing.
There you go.
commune.
There you go.
Yes, the commune.
They did this
Yes.
at the student protest, right?
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had
yeah,
a
they showed-
great organization.
Yes.
Yeah. They were demonstrating
They said
for
no-
us like what you needed to do.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is who
That's
we
why they were so dangerous.
That's right. Here's who you talk to with the press. There's one press person.
Yeah.
Yes.
No one else talks to them, or we don't talk at all.
Yeah.
Here's how you respond if some Zionist tries to get some content out of you to go viral on. They knocked that out the park.
Yeah.
And that's why they had to send the military in to break it up.
Yeah.
So
And
that's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had like a food system.
oh yeah, they had
like,
everything. It was meant to be
ships.
self-contained.
Right.
You will create, the people have this fear of communism. And I'm not a communist, by the way. Just for the sense of like, I really am trying to learn more about African ways of socialism. So what we call it is fine. I don't care. Call it communism, socialism, whatever. You can say socialism is a path to communism, right? That is if you follow that. But what I will say is it's brilliant in how it lays out and identifies what will naturally happen if you are left in that position. People are naturally community oriented. They are not naturally selfish islands. They need each other. And if you put them in that situation, they will build and they will create and they will organize. And so we just need to get more resources to make sure when that time comes, it doesn't take too long.
Yes.
We'll eventually get there, but we have violent oppressive forces who really don't want that. And they'll send, the National Guard in and they will beat you into submission. So, yeah.
Well, Laura's an astrologer, and there's
Yes.
been all this
Yes.
talk about, it's just trendy now even to be like, oh, it's a revolutionary time because
Yeah.
Pluto's in Aquarius. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I saw you on Amanda's, talking to Amanda.
Yeah.
I loved her. She was like, what?
But there's a total synergy between everything you are saying, which is like very practical,
Yeah.
like real, like right now enactable, choices, and then what Laura sees in the stars, which I think is like, it's just so incredible.
More about
Because
this.
this year also we're going through cycles that are reminiscent of the Civil War. And so what happened with the Civil War was an ideological war between brothers, essentially, like the North and the South, based on the Emancipation Proclamation. The South didn't want to free the slaves, which is, okay, weird. Hello? They should have just let them go. And I was like, how could you? Anyway. So what I foresee is there's going to be like a rift in the United States between people who are more like leftist liberal, I guess we're still in the same bucket, and these, Trumpers, the people
Who are in the minority, mind you.
They are, yes.
Yeah.
And so you already see the divide happening already. And what's weird and a weird turn of events is that I am not against the Trump voter anymore, because the people who annoy me now are the blue MAGA people.
Yeah.
I cannot believe I even got to this point,
Yeah.
because it's like we have more in common with the poor white people who voted for Trump than we do with, AOC. at
Oh,
this
man,
point.
yeah, for
You know
sure.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think I will say with my collective liberation mind that the future I imagine post-liberation will benefit those poor white misled Trump voters.
Yeah.
But I'll also say it to the camera, I don't fuck with you. If you voted for Trump.
Yeah.
I'll also say if you follow me, go ahead and unfollow. Go ahead and unfriend me.
It's fair.
I'm not cool with you right now.
It's fair.
Because you had a lot of chances, you understood what it was, you saw the signs, right? So don't worry, if we get our way, you'll be okay.
Yep.
But you messed up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the same thing. It's the same thing with Zionists too, though, right?
Yeah.
It's like
It's
collective
Zionist.
liberation means
Yeah.
you are all free.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah,
free.
yeah.
Nobody's left out.
Yeah. But you're right. There's this insane vendetta from the pro-Harris crowd, who want to spend more time blaming leftists with a backbone and a conscience.
Yeah.
Then they want to address the system and how their team set up all of these things for Trump to carry out. He wouldn't have been able to come in a vacuum and do a lot of this stuff had the door not been opened by Democrats and liberals. And so I'm just like, absolve yourself of this sort of investment in politics to where you're so deeply invested that you feel like the people who didn't vote your way contributed to the damage that's happening. Instead of being aware of the lineage of damage that doesn't just cycle in 4 years in, 4 years out. It is built upon over time. And so, God, just, again, and I have this argument, what bothers me so much too about them is like, so you just voted for Trump then? And I don't hear this anywhere else. I don't understand anywhere else where I need a math professor to help me out. But where does the math line up where not voting for someone votes for someone?
Right.
If you didn't vote for the Republican primary candidate, was that a vote for someone else? If you chose one over the other? It's like such weird logic that should easily break down when you interrogate. And again, they say like, this is how it is. This is how it works. And we're literally saying this doesn't work. And that's the problem.
Yes.
And when you are in a system of slavery and enslavement, imagine saying, well, this is just how the system works. We are enslaved. They are in power. There's no point in, you're not going to change that. That must have been unimaginable for enslaved people to change that situation. But you did. And they did. So it's very strange.
This is why Palestine also, and understanding what's happening there and understanding the U.S. role is actually so liberating. Because I was saying to some friends who are Blue MAGA,
so funny.
Also, people of color, Blue MAGA, which is another level. But but I was just like, and they're spinning, and I'm just like, how much I want to engage. And I'm like, listen, a government that funds, that sends billions to bomb babies, civilians, is bad.
It's bad.
Like, how do I make it as simple as possible, without getting all into trying to drop history or whatever. And just how is that not obvious? Right? It should be obvious,
because it goes back to what you were saying. They're invested in this system, this political party, and I think they still operate in a binary of good and evil.
Certainly.
Right. And they also have the crumbs of comfort, right?
And the Republicans are evil. They still operate in that binary.
It's much easier.
It's so much easier and more clean and more convenient. Because I was there too. I thought that voting for Joe Biden would solve the lesser of two evils. And little did I know, Joe Biden's one job was to put Trump in jail, which he didn't.
They could have put him in jail.
Literally.
What in the world?
Literally. We're so close.
Unbelievable.
And Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. couldn't even do that. He was sleeping while committing a genocide.
Sleeping through a genocide if you're doing is nasty work.
Yeah.
Literally.
It is confounding. And again, this awareness makes this clear. And it is really hard. I remember the first person who told me or I think I saw, they didn't tell me, but just abolish the presidency. I'm like, what are we going to do if we abolish the presidency?
Who's going to lead us?
What do we have? And I remember, and it was too recent to be honest, of just capitalism is the enemy. And I'm like, wait, what? Capitalism? That's how we survive. That's what's better?
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough to just say it. Had to learn it and had to the awareness, had to be invested in knowing though. That's another thing. It's just you have to be invested in the truth. And a lot of those people are not invested in really being aware. as opposed to being comfortable.
I
And you
think
have to take accountability for how you benefit too, and that's so hard.
That's hard.
That self-awareness.
Yeah.
But I think of it as like, when you had like an abusive parent and then you end up picking abusive partners because that's comfortable and that's familiar.
Right. That's exactly it.
Then
That's
you
the
talk
same thing
about
in
this,
our
right? Like
conversation.
we're used to our shackles.
We are.
Yes.
And it's like, it's,
The devil you know.
yes, the devil you
100%.
know. Yeah. So what needs to happen is like, I think liberation ultimately is spiritual. Like it's ultimately like so deep and that work needs to happen. And that's something that we in the West, so-called West, we don't really know how to do that.
Yeah.
But whatever access we have to those kinds of practices, they're whitewashed.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah, and they really diminish liberation, as a practice. It really feels like it's a lot of those, and I honestly think this is why I have had an allergy to like spiritualness.
Totally,
is
yeah.
because most of it I only realized recently, and I'm trying to embrace it more, was just very divorced from the material. And when there was tension, you just had to like put that out of your mind. It's like,
yeah.
how am I going to put that out of my mind?
5D. I'm just trying to exist in 5D.
Fifth dimension.
It's not.
We both came from that world.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I see all the red flags.
Yeah.
Should we do the rapid fire?
Rapid fire. Yeah.
So speaking of astrology, do you know your big three?
No.
Do you know your son?
Tell me.
Sun sign.
When's your birthday?
December 12th.
Oh, you're.
You gotta edit that out though. I want people to know I'm a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius.
You can
Okay.
ask me what time I was born, huh?
Well, if you don't know it, then I can look it up for you. Yeah.
You can look up what time I was born?
No.
Oh, feds.
Do you know your time of birth?
I feel like it was. I've asked my mom this for this purpose about 4 times in my life.
It's hard. My parents told me forever that I was
Your mom.
the opposite. They were like, "Oh, it was like 7 a.m., but actually it was 7 p.m."
See, and that's the thing. I don't know if I could trust her. Like,
No,
That's a big difference.
That's a big difference.
I had a whole like
You've been misdiagnosed.
Yes.
This was like a decade ago now, but I had a whole human design thing done for me wrong. As I read it, I'm like, this doesn't make sense, and I ordered my birth certificate, and it was because it was a wrong AM PM.
Yeah,
Wow.
Set everything up.
Yeah, so
I
it's
feel
totally
like it was somewhere in the 2 a.m. I feel like, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
okay. What was another question of ours?
If there was no such thing as capitalism or colonialism, what would you be doing?
Oh, I would be creating music for people to enjoy, and I think still educating and telling stories.
Okay.
I think there's always going to be education, right, and stories to tell. Even when we remove like the most inhumane barriers to life. So I think I would be finding ways to create music for people and telling stories. Maybe it's through the music, maybe it's on top of the music. Yeah, for sure.
Another question we have is like, what defines a New Yorker? But we were saying like, you and I are both from California, actually.
How long have you lived here?
It's been 15, 16 years.
Oh, that's a long time. And
Do you consider yourself a New Yorker now?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I like, this felt home. Like, California's fine. When I came to New York.
But did you used to be like diehard California?
No.
I used to be, and then
Yeah,
I came here, and I was like, oh, yeah, I don't want to
wasn't-
claim it anymore.
Yeah. I wasn't even. Yeah, I was like, I guess like the things that people were like so. Like, oh, the beach and the weather, and I was never attached to any of those things. When I came to New York, it was like, I was like, this is my place.
what
like,
brought you here?
I moved on a whim. I just was like, I was 26, and I was just like, someone gave me great advice. They were like, do it while you're young and single and can afford to be broke.
Yeah.
That's good advice. So let's just do it. So I was just like, jump in. I was like, let's see if we can get some music things going here. And, in this, I wasn't like nearly as what I am now. This like very, everything's political, social liberation. So it's a little freer.
Simpler times.
A lot of things I could do
To
without
be free
wearing.
and unaware
Yeah.
and young in New York City.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just still a know-it-all asshole. Still that. Like still had that at that time. But yeah. So I was just like, all right, let's do it, and it was great. It's the best decision. I love New York. there's still stuff I complain about, but I do feel like it feels more like home than California for sure.
Yeah. What is one thing your followers would be surprised to know about you?
That I'm very nerdy and clumsy. I'm dropping, tripping. This is what I get. I went to like my kids. I had all three at one time, and I went to like go yell at one, and I hit my pinky toe on the little like feeding cart of my youngest, and like it was like completely this way, and it was just like I'm just like screaming, and then like and like my wife had to come home from dinner, like I'm just like and it was like when I think of it over, I was just like, was I like swinging my foot so wide?
Like how even did that happen?
I was like walking, like was I just like I'm coming to get you like a duck, and just like it makes no sense. But I'm unfortunately.
I wonder if people even know you have kids.
I know. I was gonna say I didn't know you had kids.
Yeah, I do. I have three. I have three children. I don't put them on social media.
Yeah,
I have very strong beliefs about like consent for children and also what that will be used for at the time. So I like there might be some snippets somewhere, but I really try to not put them on there. Yeah. So most people wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to tell all your secrets.
I know.
I guess the last one I have is, what does liberation look like and feel like for you? Like, how would you know that it's here?
You know, I think the one thing I've accepted is it doesn't happen in my lifetime. That I am making a very small contribution and trying to encourage others to make small contributions to liberation. But it looks like removing the obstacles to people being fully human when existing in the world, and removing the barriers for them to be able to be successful, not tied to capital or money but whatever it looks like for that community at that specific time. And I think just there are no obstacles to well-being, which is what I think capitalism creates many obstacles to well-being in the name of capital. So I think that's what it looks like, and then we're less worried about who's getting what because we all have enough. Yeah, that's my quick answer, I guess.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's
Talking
a pleasure.
to us.
Yeah.
What a pleasure.
So
Thank you.
good.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching.